Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning and welcome to ZP's third monthly Tech Talk Tuesday for our channel partner community. I'm Todd Atherton, our channel sales director for the West region, and I'm joined by Marc Westberg, who is our channel sales engineer, and we'll be doing the short presentation and the demo today. Our plan is to have, excuse me, a new technical session with a new topic on the second Tuesday of each month moving forward. And like I said, this is our third one, and our fourth one will be coming up in December. The majority of you who are joining today have attended a channel technical overview with ZPE, but if not, please reach out and we can get one scheduled for you, for your team, for anyone within your organization that it makes sense, and we're happy to do that. For just quick housekeeping, Marc's presentation and demo will last about 30 minutes, and after we will answer any questions. All participants will be muted throughout, so if you do have any questions, please put them into chat or send them directly to me, and we'll get those addressed either during or after the demo. Later today, also, you will be receiving an email with details about how you can receive a $25 DoorDash gift card just for attending today's webinar. So other than that, I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Marc to get started. Marc, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Todd. Welcome everybody to the third installment, as Todd had pointed out earlier, of our monthly webinars and demos on ZPE Systems products and services. A quick agenda of what we'll go through today. The cellular functionality overview of ZPE node grid devices and how cellular interaction works. The cellular modem checking to make sure that there's a cellular modem to ensure that there's a cellular modem in the node grid hardware device. The cellular interface configuration will configure cellular failover and test that, and we'll have a brief overview. So a quick overview of the cellular functionality within the node grid services. The bands that are supported are 3G, 4G, 5G, and FirstNet, which is the AT&T emergency or education responders cellular program. Cellular interfaces can be used as a primary interface on a node grid serial device, a failover for both ingress and egress. So ingress would be if a primary connection goes down, a administrator still has the ability to get into a node grid device and then manage the devices that are hosted by that node grid device. So we could bring the primary interface up or see what's going on with the connection of a primary interface. And egress can be used for, a quick example would be say a remote location is using the node grid device as their primary connection to the internet and maybe to a point of sale system. If that primary interface goes down, we can automatically fail over to the cellular, and then the point of sale system for that customer can continue to process transactions and keep that customer's remote location up and running and doing their business. IP pass-through is the ability to pass the entire cellular connection over to another device on the network via MAC address, or we can pass it directly through to a virtual machine hosted on a node grid services device. We'll have another demonstration of configuring virtual devices in a future webinar. And then we can also use it as a secondary interface for SD-WAN. So what we can do is have primary internet traffic go out one interface, and we could have maybe point of sale traffic or Office 365 traffic go over a cellular connection. Just a couple of quick examples. And the node grid service devices, in most cases, and we'll talk about that with our sales teams, is in most cases, the node grid services devices has the ability to host multiple cellular modems and then on top of those, multiple SIM cards from different providers. And the provider addressing supported is both IPv4 and IPv6. Private dynamic IP addresses, so a commodity, go to your local T-Mobile or AT&T store and buy a broadband connection. Those are most cases just a dynamic private IP. A public dynamic IP would have to be an agreement with the provider that you're using, and then they can give you a public IP address that changes over time or upon reboot or something to that effect. And then also within your provider, they can provide you with a static public IP, which for using the device, using the cellular modem as a way to get back into a network, this would be the recommended, but there is of course additional cost on that, and that would have to be established through the cellular provider. From there, we'll move on to the demonstration. And I'll just bring up my web browser here. And I'll make that large. There we go. So on this page, oh, let me get back to my actual device. So this is the default login page for the NodeGrid services devices. You log in and you get to the access page, which shows you the devices that are actually connected to or hosted by the NodeGrid services device. In order to start configuring the cellular, the first thing that we need to do is understand if there's a cellular modem and if it's up and operational. So what I'll do is I'll select the tracking tab, and then I'll go to the devices tab, and then I will select the wireless modem tab. And you can see in this case, I have a cellular modem that's connected. The NodeGrid services router has the software has created an interface for this in the back end of the software, CDC WDM0. You can see that it's disconnected, and I'll get into why that is in just a minute. You can see that the SIM state, though, is registered with the provider. In this case, it's AT&T. So this SIM card that's in this cellular modem is actually up and ready to have a connection connected to it. We can see the active SIM card, and we can see the amount of traffic that has moved over this actual SIM card or this cellular connection. We can see the radio mode, and then one of the most important things is the cellular strength. In my case, this is in a lab in my home, and I have 65% signal strength, which for 99% of cases is more than enough to provide cellular connectivity. We can go further into the modem and understand the modem model, the firmware, hardware version, and those kind of things. One of the most important things that this provides us is the equipment IMEI number. And as we talked about earlier with public IP addresses and some of those things, the cellular provider that you're using may require you to provide the actual IMEI number for the cellular modem that's installed in a device. So this is where you can get that information. We can see that it's disconnected. The reason being is NodeGrid service devices come without a cellular interface designated on the network connections, and we'll get into configuring one of those. We can see the temperature of the actual modem card. Network information, as we were talking about, this is not connected as of yet, so we don't have any network information. We can also see down here that we can see the signal strength is up and operating, but we don't have any current data because we don't have a connection. So you can see the SIM status is updated and active, the subscriber ID of the device, the circuit ID, and all of the information from the actual SIM card. So from there, what we'll do is we'll move to the network tab, and then we'll go to connections, and we can see that we don't have, under interface, we don't have any connections currently using what the Node Grid Services router designated as CDC WDM0, which is the cellular interface. So what we can do is we can go in and add a connection. We'll name it. And then we need to select mobile broadband GSM. That tells the software within the Node Grid Services router that we're going to create a cellular connection. We'll select the interface. And as we looked before, it was CDC WDM0. So we will select that. We can enter a description if we like. Under IPv4 mode, we can have no address, or we can get a DHCP address from the provider. We can input our own DNS servers and DNS search orders. As a best practice, I tend to recommend that we ignore the obtained IPv4 DNS server, for the reason that in some cases, those DNS requests have to go over the cellular connection. So the best practice is to have either a local DNS server designated on the network page, or one of the many global DNS servers, Google or Amazon. Any of those can also work. And then it will not use the DNS server that's assigned via DHCP from the service provider. From there, we can go down to the mobile broadband connection. In 90% of cases that I've found, we can select for APN configuration automatic. And then the SIM card and the Node Grid Services router will go out and get the proper information. If that is not the case and you have specific APN information, you can enter that information under manual. I'll select the automatic. From there, we can select the MTU, the allowed modes of this specific connection. So we could allow it to go to either 4G only, 3G only, or auto select 3G, 4G. And then we can select the preferred mode. In our case, I'm going to select 4G. We can enable data usage monitoring. What this can do is, if it's a SIM card that has a certain cap monthly, if it's 20 gigs in my case, we can enter that information, and then we can have a warning, and we can create an alert on that, so that the Node Grid Services router, if it uses the cellular connection, we can know that we are at X number of gigabytes throughout the month. And the renew day is the actual day of the month that the contract, or that the amount of bandwidth is re-enabled. So I will go ahead and select enable global positioning system. This can be used for gaining time from the cellular providers' cell towers via their GPS, and it can also be used for geolocation, which gives us the ability to secure the Node Grid Services router even further. From there, we can, if there's a second SIM card installed in the router, we can enable that and go through the same steps that we went through above. In this case, I'm going to uncheck the enable second SIM card. And from there, we can scroll back up and select save. Now we'll go back to the network connections page, and we can see that we have a cellular connection. It's now connected. The entries that we made, the type is mobile broadband GSM. The interface is CDC WDM0. And now we can see that we have an IP address. What I'll do is I'll select the tracking tab, and then I'll go back to the devices tab and back to the wireless modem tab. And now, as a difference, we can see that the status is connected and the traffic is ready to go over the cellular interface should it need to. I'll select the cellular channel A, and now unlike when we first started, we have an IP address, we have the IP addressing family, the gateway, and then the amount of bytes that have gone through this specific device. From there, we can see all the information that we saw before. And from there, what we can do now is go back to network, and then under settings, we will go ahead and enable network failover. So if we select that checkbox, we want to ensure that we have the primary connection that we want to use the cellular interface for. So if that's a local LAN connection, if that is a local or a WAN connection, in my case, Ethernet 0 is connected to my WAN connection. And under secondary connection, we can select the cellular interface that we created. The cellular interface SIM card is automatically selected based on what's installed in the device. The number of failed retries to fail over, we can set to whatever number we want. And then number of successful retries to recover, we can also set to a number that is less than the number of failover retries. And then the interval between retries, we can set in the number of seconds. From there are two ways to fail over a primary connection to a cellular connection. The unreachable primary connection default gateway is one way. So that basically, over the time that we provided earlier, it will try to actually connect to that default gateway IP address. It uses ICMP. And then if that fails, it goes and fails over. In our case, I'm going to use an unreachable IP address that is not on my network. So this address is not on my network. I need to take the /24 off of there. So from there, now, if this address is not reachable, the cellular modem will fail over from primary to secondary, and the cellular modem will transmit all the traffic from the device. We can have a third level or tertiary network failover. So we can have another connection. Should we have another cellular SIM card in our device, we can then go ahead and fail over to another one. In our case, we don't have it, so we will uncheck that. And from there, that is really all we need to do. So we will select save. And now that that is saved, we can go back to the access page, and then we can go to overview. And you can see that it did not immediately fail over, but if I hit reload, the failover is now active. The ZPE Systems cloud can also show us this information. So if I go in and select my devices, and it usually takes just a minute for it to update, it should go in and be in failover mode. So if I select that device, we can see that it is in failover mode. So I'll go back to my Node Grid Services router, and we can go under security, and then we can go to geofencing. And this is what we would set up. We can see that the coordinates from the cellular modem have been found. And this is where we can set up how far away from the cellular tower this device can be without it being defaulted, so that it doesn't become so that it for security's sake. So inside we can have templates, and outside we can have templates restored to factory default. So if somebody got a hold of this device and it was outside of the 5,000 meters or 3.11 miles, it would automatically default the configuration, and no company or critical data could be lost. With that, that will complete our brief demonstration of the Node Grid cellular functionality. And I'll bring back up the. So,
awesome. Thank you, Mark. Hey, so just real quick, if anyone has any further questions, I do have a couple that I'm going to go over right now, but if anyone has any further questions, please go ahead and put them into chat and we'll get them answered. So Mark, first question is, can ZPE provide and install cellular SIM cards in Node Grid devices?
Yes, that is, it's really a twofold question. ZPE does have a product line or a SKU that we can provide on a monthly recurring basis. We can provide a SIM card within the device. So then on a monthly basis, you would pay ZPE for a 10 or a 20 gigabyte cellular card, and those can be automatically installed. The other side of it is there are professional services that can have a customer's SIM card installed in a device before shipment to the customer, so that when the device comes up and the SIM card is activated, it will automatically be available for the Node Grid Services router to use as a cellular failover or as a primary connection for that matter.
Awesome, perfect. Second question is, can cellular functionality be used for SD-WAN connectivity?
Yep, we kind of went over that earlier, but yes, we can use it as the primary connection for SD-WAN or as a secondary connection to use it as either failover or to move specific traffic from specific IP addresses to its home. If it's Office 365, if it's a point of sale system, we can separate that traffic using SD-WAN. Yep.
Okay, perfect. And then the last question that I have, unless there's any that come across, if using a data-based SIM card and all the allocated data is used, can Node Grid devices be configured to switch to another SIM or provider?
If there is another SIM included in the device, yes, that is a functionality within the Node Grid Services router that we can, as we filled out the 20 gig cap in our demo, if we get to that point, we can have a script that automatically fails over to another connection, should that be needed or be the case that is required. So one last thing I'll say on the whole cellular modem connectivity, if there are further questions, please reach out to me or your sales engineer, and we can certainly help you through any additional questions with the cellular configuration or cellular functionality. So.
Perfect. And kind of like what we said at the beginning, try to keep this at about 30 minutes, keep everybody out in the field. So I want to thank Mark and thank all of you for joining today's Tech Talk Tuesday. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll be doing one of these on the second Tuesday of each month with a new topic. And the next demo will be on December 12th, where Mark will be discussing security best practices for securing ZPE Node Grid devices. And then just one last thing, for all of you that attended today, you'll be receiving an email with details for your $25 DoorDash gift card. And you should be looking out for that sometime later this morning in the West and early in the afternoon on the East. So I appreciate it. Thank you guys very much, and have a wonderful day.